Story 1. The Haunted Lake. One night, my boyfriend and 3 of my friends were all sitting around telling ghost stories. My boyfriend happened to mention that he knew a story about the local lake. It wasn't very far from my house. He continued to tell the story of a man who killed his wife and son and then turned the gun on himself. He said that if you put baby powder on your car and go park your car in front of where their old house stood, that the ghost family will come and push your car away. So of course, us being dumb, bored kids, we all jumped in the car and headed out that way. I don't even really think that I thought anything was going to happen. It was just something to do. We parked near the old house. You could still see what was left of it, which was just the foundation and the old chimney. It was right next to the lake. We turned off the car and all the lights. And we just sat there in silence for about 5 minutes. And then my car started to move. It freaked me out. I turned my car on, turned the lights on, and sped out of there. With some coaching from my friends, I went back, resumed my original position in front of the house, and we waited. This time it took longer. 20 minutes. My friend in the back seat had her window rolled down, and she started taunting the man who had killed his wife and kid. We all laughed at her for a second, but then my car started to bounce up and down, like someone was pushing on the trunk really hard. And then my car started to roll backwards uphill at about 4 miles an hour towards the lake. We'd probably been pushed a good 200 feet. I saw the lake coming up. I turned my car on, threw it in drive, and we got out of there. No one talked as I drove in silence. I could see in my rearview mirror the sheer look of panic on my friends' faces. My boyfriend sat next to me, looking straight ahead. We pulled into the next gas station we found. And without saying a word to each other, we all jumped out. Ran to the front and the back of the cars to see if the baby powder had any handprints in it. On the front of my car were 2 sets of adult handprints. We looked at each other and we began to cry. We went to the back, and on the bumper, there were shoe prints from a child. I got back in my car and my friends followed. I tried to start the car, but this time it wouldn't start. After about 10 minutes of trying, it finally started, and we made it back to my friend's house. That night we all slept in the same room. And we've never gone back to that spot again. And we've never told anyone outside of that little group. Afraid our peers would think we were crazy. Story 2. The Lady Upstairs. When I was about 6 years old, my family lived in a 2-family house. The upstairs lived an old lady named Margaret, and I was scared of her. I couldn't even say her name. I would run in fear. But she never harmed me or anything like that. Just something about her scared me. Her name, her clothes, everything. When we were at supper, I was always told to go get her, because my mom always gave her something to eat. And here she would come down the stairs in her rags of clothes, smelling of bad odors. And every time I would run and hide under my dad and hold on to his legs. One day, I was sitting outside with my mother and one of Mom's friends when these women came to take Margaret to play bingo. I ran over to her and I said, "Margaret, don't go. Don't go with them. They won't bring you back." She smiled at me so big in disbelief and hugged me so tight. And she said, "It'll be okay, you'll see." But I kept begging her not to go. The 2 women kept trying to get me to go away, and then finally one of the women gave me a quarter to leave them alone. Well, they left with Margaret, and Margaret did not come home. She had a heart attack, and they pulled into a gas station to try to get help, and that's where she died. That summer, we had the whole house rented out to us. Dad cleaned out her apartment. It took 16 whole trash bags to clean out her whole life. And the whole time we lived there, you could hear noises from her upstairs, even when no one was up in that part of the house. And every day around supper time, you could hear footsteps on the stairs coming down the steps. I have a friend that lives in the building now and says that things like that still go on. She said that to me even before I said a word about growing up there and about Margaret. So I know he has to be telling the truth. I hope Margaret finds her peace. Story 3. Strange Things at Grandma's. I live in a Mexican border town. My whole family lives in this area. My grandparents had lived in one house for years and years and decided to move into a new house not far from their old one. Their new house was beautiful, and I really loved that house. My grandparents also don't believe in ghosts, but they said after this experience, they do. Their new house was 2-story, with the bedrooms being upstairs. One night, my grandmother thought that she saw a fire in the middle of the backyard. Now, in Mexico, we have this thought that if you see fire in a haunted house, it means that there's money hidden somewhere. So my uncle came over to the house. He sat on the couch, and he told my grandparents, I am going to bring this man over to help me dig and see if there's really treasure buried in the backyard. Just as he finished talking, one of the legs on the couch broke off, and the couch fell to the ground. My uncle took this as a sign to leave them alone, not to mess with whatever was going on. My grandparents said they felt a lot of things in this house. My grandmother heard all the windows and doors opening and closing. She went downstairs to check, and just as she would get downstairs, the noise would stop. One day, my aunt was in the bathroom upstairs when she heard a man calling her. She thought it was my grandfather. So she says, hey, wait a minute. The voice came out stronger, and it sounded just like my grandfather had been hurt. So she ran out as fast as she could, and she found my grandfather to be fine. She asked him if he was okay, and he laughed and said, of course. He hadn't heard the sound, and he hadn't been calling out to her. Soon after that, they decided to move back to their old house. And I can't blame them. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the stories. If you did, hit that subscribe button. Give me a thumbs up. I really do appreciate it. Bye.